Hello and welcome to my channel. I know I've been gone for some time just because I've had a lot going on and I just haven't been in the mental capacity to really do this, but we're back and we're going to talk about Simon Nelson today. He is an Illinois mass murderer who was convicted of murdering his 6 children, ages 12, 10, 8, 7, 6, and 3, and his family dog. During his trial, Nelson claimed his father, who committed suicide in 1954, physically abused him as a child. He said he found his father's journal in which the older man blamed his family for his despondency, and that's usually how it is. You know, the abuser tends to blame the family, obviously, for the abuse. In this case, it sounded to me like his father had severe depression and blamed his family for causing said depression. On January 7th of 1978 in Rockford, Illinois, after his wife called him to say she wanted a divorce, Nelson used a knife and rubber mallet to kill his children, 12-year-old Jenny, 10-year-old Simon Peter III, 8-year-old Andrew, 7-year-old Matthew, 6-year-old Roseanne, and 3-year-old David while they were asleep. He also slit the throat of the family dog, Pretzel. Pretzel was found lying between 2 of the children, and Nelson then drove to Milwaukee and attacked his wife. As he was beating her, he told her that he had killed their children, and the police arrived to arrest Nelson midway through the attack. It was sad. It's very sad that, his children did deserve that. And it always makes me sad when kids are involved, kids or animals, and in this case we have both. These kids, they weren't prepared. They couldn't fight back. They didn't fight back. And there was no need to murder the children just because his wife wanted a divorce. But this happens a lot, actually. It's more common for one spouse to kill the other spouse instead of getting a divorce, because that way they get money and there's no threat of them interfering with life. I mean, look at Chris Watts and Scott Peterson. They not only killed their spouses, but they killed their kids as well. And yeah, it's more common than divorce, and that is because you get something out of it and you don't end up having to pay alimony or child support or whatever else. Nelson's defense team pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He said he could not recall the killings, claiming he snapped when his wife called to say she didn't love him anymore and was divorcing him. Nelson's defense failed, and he was convicted of 6 counts of murder. The prosecution sought a death sentence. Asking for mercy, Nelson's public defender said, "You have to remember that the decision you make today is one you will have to live with for the rest of your life. If electrocuting Simon Peter Nelson will bring back the children, then do it. Or will it be more cruel to make Nelson think about every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every month, and every year for the rest of his life what he did? Yesterday I wouldn't ask for mercy. Today I do." And, I mean, I guess it is more cruel to make him live out, 6 consecutive life sentences. But, in my personal opinion, it won't bring the children back. And I'm not a big fan of the death penalty, but in some cases it's necessary. And to me, this sounds like a necessary situation. Nelson was spared execution after the jury deadlocked during the sentencing phase. The jury voted 11-1 in favor of a death sentence. Nelson was sentenced to 6 concurrent terms of 100 to 200 years in prison, so 600 to 800 years. And officials recommended that he never be released from prison. Under more lenient laws at the time, he became eligible for parole in 1986, but was denied parole 18 times over the remainder of his life. At a parole hearing in 2004, Nelson said he had benefited from anger management therapy in prison and would never be violent again. He expressed remorse, saying, "I almost feel guilty for the fact that I'm regaining my moral compass. I've put myself back together. The remorse that I feel gets deeper the more I learn about what the weaknesses were that allowed this to happen. If I could change history and there not be a crime, that would be my greatest wish. I can't do that. I do apologize to my family and friends, the Rockford community, and everyone else that's been hurt by this event." When the parole board asked Nelson to detail his crimes, he said he only remembered bits and pieces of sheer horror. He claimed his last memory beforehand was his wife's phone call. Quote, "I felt like it was my dad all over again." End quote. Nelson claimed he experienced auditory and visual hallucinations and felt his dead father's presence during the crime. All I remember is being split somehow and my father being present. And again, this is irrational and me telling him not to go up the stairs. This was after I had imagined that I killed myself. End quote. Honestly, he probably should have. You know, I've never been the type to say that I would never be the type to tell anyone that killing yourself is the option. But in this case, this is a horrible man. And I don't, my opinion, you cannot express enough remorse for killing your children. The one person that is supposed to do everything to protect them is the one person that they were most afraid of. And that they ended up needing to be saved from. And children they're just so trusting. And, you know, these kids, they were probably thinking, oh, it's just daddy. But it just, ugh. At a parole hearing in 2008, Nelson said he didn't know if he deserved parole, but his job as a prison library clerk, which he had held since the 1980s, was proof he could be a productive member of society. I think that demonstrates that if I can make a commitment to something, I carry it through, he said. If you did choose to parole me, you wouldn't have to worry about my life out there because I would be following Christ. Bullshit. I think it's so, especially if you've been in prison, like, I mean, think about it. He's been in prison since the 1980s. It's 2008. He's been in prison this whole time. So let's give or take, let's say 28 years, I think that would be. Never good at math, sorry. Give or take a few years. I from what I understand, it is really hard to, like, come out of prison and be, like, different. And you kind of learn to be more aggressive and more violent while in prison because of the environment and the people that you're around. So I don't know. I personally don't think after you've been in there for so long, you should be let out because I don't think they would know what to do with themselves. Not to mention, you know, the sense of routine and protection and guaranteed food and whatnot. It'd be really hard for him to find a job or anything else like that. And that to me, like, says a lot. Like, they're kind of better off staying in prison when they've been in that long. Although one member of the board, Craig Findlay, credited Nelson for being a model inmate and making a case for his spiritual conversion being genuine, he said he would never vote in favor of his release. Quote, almost alone, among inmates in custody, he deserves to die in prison, Findlay said. There are not many I would say that about, but this is a crime that can't be forgiven. He can never be released, end quote. At a parole hearing in 2014, Nelson repeated his claims that he didn't remember the crime very well and was a sincere Christian. Nelson was an inmate at Graham Correctional Center in Hillsborough, Illinois. He died in prison on January 18th of 2017 at the ripe age of 85 at St. John's Hospital in Springfield. Nelson had been awaiting another parole hearing at the time of his death. Throughout his nearly 40 years in prison, Nelson was whose projected discharge date was in October 2076, never won a single vote in favor of his release, which honestly, more power to the people who didn't. Like I said, this is the kind of case where they should never be out of prison ever. Also, I wanted to put this at the end of this video because I had somebody make a comment about how it looks like I'm reading an article. I am reading a script and notes that I have pre-written because I have short-term memory loss. And I can't, no matter how many times I go over it, I'm never going to memorize the whole thing. So, yes, I am technically reading a script, but it is my own script. So, I just wanted to make that very clear. I'm hoping to have maybe a little bit of a longer one for you guys next week. Not doing the makeup kind of makes the videos a little bit shorter. But as always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others and make good choices. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.